Tels, or prehistoric settlement mounds, are characteristic of the flatter lands of the eastern Mediterranean, particularly Lebanon, Syria, Israel, and eastern Turkey. Of more than 200 Tels in Israel, Megiddo, Hatzor, and Beersheba are representative of Tels that have substantial remains of cities with biblical connections. The three Tels also present some of the best examples in the Levant of elaborate Iron Age underground water collecting systems, created to serve dense urban communities, reflecting centralized authority based on prosperous agriculture and control of important trade routes. The three nominated Tels are scattered across the state of Israel. Tel Hatzor is in the north, 14 kilometers north of the Sea of Galilee. Tel Megiddo is just north of where the Kishon River reaches its northernmost point, southeast of Haifa. Tel Beersheba is east of the city of Beersheba, to the north of the Negev Desert in the south of Israel. Tel Beersheba is at the intersection between roads leading north to Mount Hebron and eastwards to the Judean Desert and the Dead Sea, westwards to the coastal plain, and southwards to the Negev Heights and the Red Sea. Although the earliest remains from the Tel date to the 4th millennium BC, Beersheba remained abandoned during the Bronze Age. Having remained uninhabited for some 2,000 years, the Tel was resettled during the 11th century BC in the early Iron Age. This phase of settlement came to an end in 925 BC, when the site was conquered by the Egyptians. The main period represented in the Tel was founded in the 9th century BC by the Judahite monarchy, and then rebuilt 3 more times until its final destruction at the end of the 8th century. Beersheba was a planned city rather than one that evolved gradually. The Iron Age plan has been unearthed almost in its entirety. The outline is oval, encircled by a wall and gate to the south. The city was divided into 3 blocks by peripheral streets, and the residential quarters were of uniform size. All streets lead to a main city square. Beneath the city streets was an elaborate drainage system of plastered gutters that collected water from houses and channeled it under the outer wall to a water cistern outside the city. Beersheba had 2 water systems, a well outside the city wall, and within the city, a reservoir for times of siege. The well water was some 69 meters below the surface. The upper part was lined with dressed limestone, the lower part cut into chalk. This deep well had no parallels until the Byzantine period. Inside the city, the water system consisted of a network of channels that collected water into a subterranean reservoir, accessed by a deep shaft equipped with stairs. The water was floodwater from the Hedron Wadi, diverted into the channels. In Israel, the Tels vary in size, from small ones covering around 1 hectare, such as Beersheba, to large ones extending to around 10 hectares, such as Megiddo. There are also a few notably extensive sites, such as Hatzor, which covers almost 100 hectares. Similar large Tels are found in Syria. Tel Hatzor is the largest biblical site in Israel, covering an area of almost 100 hectares. It's strategically located at a major crossroads, dominating the trade and military routes that connected the land of what became Israel to Phoenicia, Syria and Anatolia to the north, Mesopotamia to the east, and Egypt to the south. The surrounding fertile Hula plain was the basis for Hatzor's wealth and the site of several battles. Hatzor was a thriving city throughout most of its existence. Several monuments deserve mention. In the beginning of the 2nd millennium BC, the whole enclosure of the lower city was enclosed by earthen ramparts, 9 meters high of a brick core and earthen outer skin, and protected by a deep moat. There were at least 2 monumental gates with Syrian pilasters flanking the entrance. The whole Bronze Age enclosure was similar to contemporary Syrian towns such as Qatna. During the Middle and Late Bronze Ages, several palaces and temples were erected in both the upper and lower city. Some of these were built on huge earthen podiums, with well-dressed basalt stone for lining the walls, round basalt column bases defining the entrances, and cedarwood beams for walls and floors. Hatzor is the southernmost site where these Syrian architectural features were found. A noteworthy element in the overall plan of this prosperous city is the water system, built to supply the city's needs under siege. A considerable number of the Tels are the remains of cities and settlements mentioned in the Old Testament, a book revered by both Jews and Christians, and acknowledged in Islam as a fundamental source. They're therefore referred to as biblical Tels. The Old Testament, as a historical source document, refers to events in the period from roughly 1700 BC to the 2nd century BC. The Tels do, however, for the most part, have a far longer history, in some cases stretching back 6,000 years BC. Old Testament history is principally concerned with the religious history of Israel in Canaan. The land known as Canaan was situated in the territory of the southern Levant, in what's now Israel, the Palestine Authority, Jordan, Lebanon, and southwestern Syria. The Tels are seen as an outstanding example of the interchange of human values throughout the ancient Near East, from Egypt in the south to Anatolia and Mesopotamia in the north. Megiddo and Hatzor were large, important city-states founded on international trade routes, which brought them into contact with Egypt and kingdoms to their north and east. The Bible gives evidence of ties with neighbors, as well as of alliances with other royal houses. Architectural styles also reflect Egyptian, Syrian, and Aegean influences, but these influences were merged with local ones to create a unique local style. Megiddo is one of the most impressive Tels in the Levant. Strategically sited near the narrow Aruna Pass, overlooking the fertile Jezreel Valley, and with abundant water supplies, from the 4th millennium BC through to the 7th century BC, Megiddo was one of the most powerful cities in Canaan and Israel, controlling the Via Maris, the main international highway connecting Egypt to Syria, Anatolia, and Mesopotamia. Epic battles that decided the fate of Western Asia were fought nearby. In the Iron Age, Megiddo became an economic center, and in 925 BC was once again conquered by Egypt for a short while. In the 9th and 8th centuries BC, Megiddo was the main center for the northern kingdom of Israel, when its prosperity was based on the horse trade, and it had a reputation for chariot racing. This was Megiddo's heyday. Settlement on Tel Megiddo covers 4 main periods. The earliest settlement during the Neolithic period is revealed by pottery finds in caves and habitation sites within stone walls. In the early Bronze Age, there's evidence of a massive stone-built town wall that partly encircled the site, and also a temple compound, both destroyed by an earthquake. When the town was rebuilt, 3 porticoed rectangular temples and a round altar were constructed in what's been described as a sacred compound, the monumentality of which has no parallel in the Levant. It features the only record of ritual activity in an ancient Near Eastern temple. The complex is also a very early manifestation of the urbanization process. In the Middle Bronze Age, around the 12th century BC, the town was rebuilt as an urban fortified center, part of the Canaanite city-state. After its destruction by sea peoples in about 1130 BC, the city was destroyed by a violent fire. It was then rebuilt as an Israelite city in the Iron Age. The authenticity of the ruins on Tel Megiddo is incontestable. Scientific excavations have revealed evidence of human occupation over many centuries, and the excavated remains have been carefully conserved for display to visitors. There's been a certain degree of restoration of walls and other structures, but this has been executed with attention to the choice of materials and technique. The excavated remains form outstanding examples of urban planning. They also offer outstanding structures such as the Megiddo stables, the Hatzor temples, and the 3 water systems. During the Iron Age, the water systems at Megiddo reached their most sophisticated phase. The water came from a spring at the foot of the mound, accessed by a concealed passageway from within the city under the city wall. As the town grew and rose, the journey to collect water increased. In its final manifestation, the water system consisted of a cave hewn round the well, with an 80-meter-long aqueduct carrying water to the bottom of a vertical shaft in the city. The 3 Tels together have the following qualities, which when combined give the serial nomination Outstanding Universal Value. The 3 Tels reflect the wealth and power of Bronze and Iron Age cities in the fertile biblical lands, based on centralized authority, which allowed control of trade routes to the north, east and south, connecting Egypt to Syria and Anatolia to Mesopotamia. The 3 Tels are also nominated for the impressive remains of their underground water catchment systems, which reflect sophisticated and geographically responsive engineering solutions to water shortage. These seem to have reached their zenith in the Iron Age.